sheeple, lazy and evil. For years I've watched y'all allow Donald Trump turn you to crazy people. Where's that freedom eagle when you...
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. So occasionally I like to find tweets or articles or something like that that makes an interesting point that I would like to talk about. So this week I found a tweet from Andreas Hale, a wrestling journalist. You know, he's a friend of Big E's. And this is what he tweeted out. I found this to be very interesting. He says, "You know what I find interesting? CM Punk and Bryan Danielson changed the perception of what a successful WWE superstar looked like. As soon as both were gone, Vince went back to his old vision. Don't believe me? Check the dates and how they coincide." And a lot of people were yelling at him in the comment section about Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit and all the other smaller, more technical guys who predate CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. But I think they missed the point. What he's trying to say is the indie guy. That's what he's trying to say. And that the indie guy can be a success in WWE. And it's not a foreign concept. We already know that you don't have to be superstar Billy Graham or Hulk Hogan in order to make it in WWE. We already know that. We've seen numerous Macho Man Randy Savage was only like 5'9" or something. He used to walk around on his tippy toes because he was so short. He didn't want people to know he was that short. You know, he used to always have the gowns where he could stretch his arms out to make himself seem like he was bigger than he really was. You know, so Macho Man kind of broke the mold, you know. So we could talk about those guys. Flair wasn't the biggest guy in the world either. He was world champion a couple of times before Shawn, before Bret, you know. So the mold had already been broken. The issue that he's talking about here is that the perception of the indie guy, the guy who comes from the small gyms, you know, the Ring of Honor guys, it was always a belief that those guys could never really get over in WWE. That they would, even if they had charisma, it wasn't enough. That they were too small, too skinny, not enough muscle mass. Now, if we're going to be honest, WWE did force both of them to change their bodies. You can look at CM Punk when he became champion from when he started. He did a complete change. He cut his hair. He bulked up as far as gained weight. He gained muscle, and he still looks like that today. Bryan Danielson got a little bit more muscular. You know, he still looks like that today. You know, he changed his look. He grew that gnarly beard. You know, WWE made some changes to these guys, but ultimately at their core, they were just indie guys. And this is, I think, what he's talking about. And he said that when those guys were gone, Vince just went back to his original idea of the sort of jocks that he liked to push. You know, before CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, it was Randy Orton and John Cena. And it was Batista. You know, guys with sports backgrounds, guys who lift weights for a living, that kind of stuff. And we see with NXT that he's kind of going back to that. And, you know, he's not wrong when you think about it. And the way I considered it and my formulation of the way I looked at it, I said to myself, you know, Vince has always been looking for, you know, the next Hulk Hogan. You know, Vince told you what wrestling was about. Hell, Vince Sr. You know, a lot of people didn't watch my video when I talked about the the Capitol Revolution. The library videos didn't do very well, but there was a lot of good information in there. And so to recap the Capitol Revolution, one of the pieces of the book is that WWE has a history of finding a guy who's big and muscular, who people criticize his work. And the McMahons basically just say, I don't care. He appeals to the lowest common denominator. He's a Superman for the masses, and then they push him. Then the media complains about him, but the McMahons push him anyway. And he ends up becoming a huge superstar. And then they kind of start to relent. You know, as time goes on, of course, they start to relent. And then they start moving towards the more technical guy. They do the technical guy for a little while. until the next Superman comes along. This whole cycle began with Bruno Sammartino. There's plenty of articles and different things where people were dissing Bruno, said Bruno was no good. He was too green. He sucked. He was only like 24 or 26 when he first came to the territory. He was awful. McMahon sent him to go work in Canada and so sent him to go work in some other places. But they were still talking about how bad Bruno was when he won the belt from Buddy Rogers. And he won the belt in 8 seconds with a bear hug, by the way. So it wasn't like he went out there and did a 90-minute wrestling classic and became the champion. No, they put him over like a Superman. The exact same thing they would do with a Bill Goldberg or a Brock Lesnar or with anybody else. It's classic McMahon booking. Superstar Billy Graham. Look how many people say that he sucks. He's no good. There's no great Superstar Billy Graham match. But look at how many people ripped off Superstar Billy Graham. Jesse the Body Ventura, Scott Steiner, Hulk Hogan. There's a lot of guys who ripped off Superstar Billy Graham. The physique. He really got over. He became a superstar, literally, and he wasn't even really supposed to. He was supposed to be like a stopgap champion. He was never meant to be champion as long as he was. And then they went to the technical guy. They went to Bob Backlund. Went away from Billy Graham to Bob Backlund, and they led with Bob Backlund for a little while until Hulk Hogan showed up. Hulk Hogan was the Superman. Hulk Hogan comes in. Hulkamania is running wild. Everybody talks about Hulk Hogan. Don't know a wrist lock from his asshole. But Hulk Hogan is making more money than anybody ever at this point. Why should anybody care about his wrestling abilities? So when Hogan was done, they kind of tried Flair a little bit. That didn't really work out, so they went with Bret. Then we had the Bret years, the Shawn years. The Austin years were a little bit of an aberration because Austin wasn't really a Superman. Neither was The Rock. Then the next Superman was Brock Lesnar, but he was a heel. He was a monster heel. From him, you had John Cena. Now, John Cena clicked. It worked. It's the age-old McMahon story. John Cena doesn't know how to work. He's green. He sucks. Nobody likes him. But he's a Superman for the children. Everybody believes in him. He's big. He's muscular. He can talk. Everything works. Randy Orton, same thing. Batista, same thing. And then we get to Bryan Danielson and CM Punk. And now we've got the CM Punk with the awkward tattoos. He's got a Pepsi tattoo. And he's kind of, Triple H called him skinny fat in a promo before. Because he kind of was, He wasn't in the greatest shape in the world. He looked kind of ratty with the long stringy hair. The weird piercings in the mouth and stuff like that. Nobody really got it. He was very niche. But he was able to get over in the mainstream. Bryan Danielson is very short. He was, they really pushed the whole vegan thing, as far as alternative lifestyles. Because CM Punk was straight edge, didn't drink, didn't smoke, that kind of stuff. So you had two guys who were smaller from the same independent organization in Ring of Honor, lived in alternative lifestyles, but was able to get over in the mainstream. So this is what Andreas Hill is talking about. The perception that guys who are, not jocks, who are off the beaten path, even though I think Bryan Danielson is more of a jock than CM Punk is. CM Punk seems to represent more of the nerdish core of the wrestling fan, while Bryan Danielson is at least a guy who is interested in mixed martial arts and stuff like that. So you have these guys, and they finally get over, and they make, they do what they do as far as ratings and stuff like that. And people, of course, jumped in the comment section and started talking about that too. You could see that the ratings, started to fall the moment CM Punk became champion. A lot of people started saying that. I don't know whether that's true or not. To me, that kind of stuff is irrelevant because part of what makes a champion draw is what you do with them. If you're not really doing anything with them, don't expect them to draw too much, But CM Punk was champion for a full calendar year, so you can't say that he didn't get a chance. Bryan Danielson was a little bit different, they hit him with the small, short runs. He won the title and then lose it immediately. It get taken from him for some kind of a bureaucratic BS or something like that. But the end game here is that they've got over. And now that they're gone, because indie guys is going to indie, you know, WWE realized, looking at these kinds of guys, like, yeah, they can get over and they can be stars, but they're not the guys that we want. You know, what we want is the Roman Reigns. What we want is the John Cena. What we want is the Batistas. Even if we end up with a Diesel, it's a lot better than an Adam Cole. You know, even if we end up with a Lex Luger, you know, it's a lot better than a Johnny Gargano. You know, in that time frame, you did have a technical guy or somebody else on the roster who was in some ways more over and more important. And I think Bryan Danielson was that guy at this time. Kurt Angle was that guy at one point, where you can rely on him more than your big muscular guy. You know, as a consistent draw, as somebody who can consistently put on good matches, who people consistently like. You know, Kurt Angle was that guy for a long time. You know, Danielson played that role. Bret Hart played that role. You know, there was it constantly trying to replace these guys with bigger, stronger, and more muscular dudes, but it never really worked out. You know, like Kurt Angle was there when Brock was there. Of course, Brock flamed out. You know, because he didn't really want to travel and do all that kind of stuff, so he ended up flaming out. You know, you had Lex Luger when Bret Hart was there. You know, Luger flamed out. And, you know, Bryan Danielson, you had quite a few guys that were there that were bigger, muscular guys that Danielson had to work with and try to help them get over. You know, unfortunately, it would have been Roman Reigns, you know, that would have, quote unquote, flamed out, but he really didn't. He ended up coming back better than ever, actually. So we're in this position where we're in the cycle of trying to find the next powerhouse marquee WWE superstar, and it's easy for people to just start yelling out Braun Breaker from the back of the room. You know, I think that the spot is pretty much earmarked for him. If that's just me being honest, you know, I can see them cutting 99% of the NXT roster, but they're not going to cut Braun Breaker. He just seems to be the guy that they kind of want. He's big, he's muscular, he's athletic. He seems to really want to do this. He has verbal mic skills. He looks like the kind of person that, you know, kids can look up to, and he can, you know, that kind of thing, be a superhero for the masses and that sort of stuff. That's what they want. That's what they're looking for. Of course they're going to start looking for that. They never stop looking for it. That's the thing. It's just they decide to put the gas more on it at certain times or in other times. Like they're constantly looking for the next guy, you know? And sometimes there's an unfortunate situation where you have like a Lashley. Lashley comes in, he's huge, he's muscular, but this is the age of John Cena, and it's the age of Batista. He can't really get over at this point in time, even though Vince is working with him personally. And this is why, you know, the ECW project ended up being the Bobby Lashley show, you know, because Vince saw Lashley and was like, fuck, that's a guy. That's a box office attraction right there. Why are we not pushing this guy to be the star of the show? He's got to be a star somewhere. They took him off SmackDown and put him on ECW so he can be the star. And then Vince worked with him personally. Vince never stops looking for his guys. It's just sometimes shit gets in the way. You know, in that situation, Lashley left for whatever reason. Brock up and left. Batista retired, you know. But, you know, Batista was older than he looked anyway. He was like 35 when he was a rookie. Cena starts to wind down. You know, now we're talking about Roman winding down. And I think that the whole thing with the leukemia really kind of, I don't think that, you know, when it comes to how they started to change NXT, that leukemia scare, I think that also led a lot to them reverting back to what they want, or, you know, what they need. Because then they realized Roman's getting a little bit older. You know, he was 33 when he had the leukemia scare. Now he's what, 34, 36 or something like that. And he said he ain't going to be doing this much longer. Brock said he's not going to be doing this much longer. 3 or 4 more years. Brock could be almost 50. You know, Goldberg won't be around for much longer. You got to start building up your new talent. You got to start looking for your next Superman or your next technical guy who can be a star, who can show personality. If those guys were not in NXT at that point in time, what is the purpose of keeping them around? Just so they can have good matches and have feel-good moments with people who, for 700 people? That doesn't seem to make much sense. It doesn't make much sense to me. I was just talking to some subscribers on Twitter about this. If NXT is a money pit, it always has been. You know, it was a pet project for Triple H when it comes to the developmental process. And that's what they wanted. They wanted you to go down there and to produce stars. And that's what NXT did. NXT produced a lot of stars. You know, some of them got further than others. Some of them got released. Some of them flamed out. Some of them made it. But what I think, another thing that is very, I think, underrated in terms of why NXT has gone back to what it's supposed to be is when people saw Bianca Belair. And I could have swore I just watched this conversation occur where I think it was on Reddit. And people was talking about how, you know, Black and Gold NXT, how it was so much better. The matches were so much better because the talent has so much more experience. And then somebody said, like, NXT is always supposed to be developmental. When you started seeing people come up from the main roster and actually start to stick, and there's no reason for it, there's no explanation for it. You have a guy like Robert Roode who flamed out, Nakamura who's just kind of there. He just kind of exists. And you're like, these guys were huge stars in NXT. Why aren't they making a big splash on the main roster? But then you see Alexa Bliss. And then you see Elias. And you're like, wait a minute. And you see Bianca Belair. Somebody who never got a chance at all in NXT. And they're the ones who are making it. Or at least lasting much longer. Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin has a better career than Robert Roode. And you have to say, what is it about them that they are lasting longer than the guys who were earmarked in NXT to be the stars? And there's no real answer to that question other than they fit more of what WWE wanted than the guys that they got. There's nothing wrong with Robert Roode. But Robert Roode was in his mid-30s when he came to WWE. If he had came just a few years younger, he might have actually got over and been something. Nakamura was going to have that language thing. The story is not over for Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens yet. Even though I think, you know, at least one of them has hit their limit already. But the story is not over for them yet. A lot of the other guys, like Pac, he was never going to last. He's a midget, you know. And that kind of stuff is what they started to get all the time in NXT. Started to get these Mexican dudes like Sin Cara, who was another big Triple H signing that ends up being a ton of waste of money. Andrade was another one. Brought him in. He can't speak English. You have to try to find a way to push him, but he can't talk. Oh, put him with Selena Vega. It's like, okay, then she can talk for herself. Let her wrestle for herself. How long are we supposed to keep them together? Forever? You know, like Brock and Lesnar. Well, they never broke up. It's like, well, you have to do something else too. You have to be at least serviceable on your own. These sorts of things started to pop up. And you do see why they went back to the tried and true method. Because all the deviations from the tried and true method have proven not to work. What they do is take relative unknowns who are big, who are muscular, who have charisma, who the wrestling media and everyone else says is trash and they're terrible and yada, 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 and they turn them loose on the American public. And then those people usually attract a larger audience than the guy who can go out there and do the best flips or do the best world of sport exchange, because all they care about is big, strong guys doing big, strong guy stuff. Now, just a little aside to this. because I think this was something else that was pretty interesting, but I think it fits very well here. Is somebody says, and it was just a simple question: why is it that Vince has to pre-decide who's a star and who isn't? Look at all the dudes who jump ship are so over right now because they seize the freedom to perform. Why does Vince get to prejudge, pre-decide who is over? Like, for the same reason the director decides that Arnold Schwarzenegger should be Conan the Barbarian and not Carrot Top. Carrot Top can be in great shape, sure. But are you really going to go see Conan the Barbarian starring Carrot Top? Would you go see Die Hard if it was starring John Oliver? No. I mean, when you're casting in a movie, and in some degree, that's what wrestling is. To a degree, you're going to pick the guy you think best fits that role. Now, other people can outperform them and get that role. Sure, I can agree with that. But under no circumstances are you going to make John Oliver, the action star who goes around with the AK-47 and shooting up a bunch of people. It's not believable. And somebody can be over and still not be qualified to be a world champion. I mean, we've been over that 100 times. Too Cool was over. But are they qualified to be world champions? No. So that kind of stuff, you need to think about it. But I think that that's a good question because some people say, he can be wrong. And sometimes he is wrong. He was wrong about Chris Masters. He was, he was definitely wrong about Chris Masters. But he also got Chris Masters when he was 22. And by the time Chris Masters was 26, he had burned out in WWE twice at that point. But the end game is this, is that he kind of has the idea that Superman, the superhuman, is what people are looking for out of pro wrestling. And he's got proof of concept that is what they're looking for. It doesn't mean that Bryan Danielson and CM Punk and all these guys are bad. Obviously, they can do well on their own. You see them doing well in AEW. But that AEW level success, what's good for them, is bad for WWE. In other words, if WWE drew houses that were in small buildings that AEW drew, if they drew AEW's TV ratings, that wouldn't be good for them. All right? That would be terrible for them. They would be expecting to do more. They're expecting to be in bigger buildings. They're expecting to sell more action figures, more t-shirts, and all this kind of stuff. Their vision is grander. Therefore, they can't just build an entire promotion full of fucking Johnny Garganos. That doesn't make any sense. And who would want that? Outside of the people who watch AEW. So I agree. I think that once Vince kind of saw that you can't out-indie the indie marks, why bother? Go back to what you do best. Find an untapped talent who other people say is, oh, this guy is so terrible. I hear about Alexa Bliss all the time. She's one of the biggest stars in the business. Oh, she can't wrestle. She can't do it. I'm like, man, who gives a fuck at this point? She's been in this shit for like 6 years now. She ain't going to get much better than she is right now. And that's not really her main job. Her main job right now is to be, promo, do character stuff. And she can do that shit without even getting in the ring. Her matches are secondary to all the other stuff she can do. And that's what the McMahons are looking for. They're looking for people who, they don't have to go in there and have an hour-long match. They don't need an hour to get over. 10 to 15 minutes, do your thing and get the hell out of there. If you got to eat up a half hour of the show in order to get over, then goddamn, you might be the only guy on the show that's fucking over at that point. It's all about you maximizing your minutes, which is a JR thing, because you're not going to get a lot of them in WWE. And being the kind of guy that appeals to the masses. not dweebs. Dweebs do not appeal to the masses. Johnny Gargano was never going to appeal to the masses. Oh, he likes Iron Man, and I like Iron Man too. Most people are kind of like, so what? He's a dork. Even if I liked Iron Man the movie and I liked Marvel and stuff like that, that doesn't mean I want it mixed in with my wrestling. Like it's cute when it's Rey Mysterio because he's all small and cartoonish and everything. When it's Johnny Gargano, he's kind of like, man baby. That's what people think. Dork. But I didn't see nothing wrong with this tweet. I actually liked it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.